grants programs for all sorts of people that the creative industries might have access. Okay? But there was no specific support for anything that was called the creative industries. From a government point of view, it wasn't on their radar. In 2009, the federal government created the Creative Industries Innovation Centre. That's the organisation I work for. It really represented the largest investment by government in the creative industries to that point. So, they did this in a very particular way. They had a program which was called Enterprise Connect, which provided support to manufacturers, so people who made things in Australia. And that program, Enterprise Connect, provided a business advisor, somebody like me, who would go in and work with the company to do a business review, and then they would get a grant matched up to $20,000. So that imperative to do something around manufacturing in this country, you would all still be, that is still a live issue today in Australia. That is still talked about all the time. How can we be a country that makes things? How can we continue to make things in this country when things are made very cheaply offshore? Yeah. So a manufacturing program, a program to help manufacturers is now going to be kind of retrofitted to help the creative industries. And there's a problem, because Enterprise Connect is run by the Department of Industry and they don't know anything about the creative industries. To give you an example, this is what the website looks like. Right? Now, if you're a member of the creative industries, this is not really speaking to you, I'd suggest. This is kind of not the sort of thing which might attract you to getting assistance from a government service. So Enterprise Connect, being a manufacturing program, is extended to a number of different areas in 2009. Defence, mining and resources, clean energy, companies in regional areas, creative industries, tourism, transport and logistics, information technology and communication. If you are looking at this list of things and thinking, what binds them together? Not very much. Not very much at all. So here's my question for you, and ask you, 2009, we'd like to get, what does this indicate that the government is suddenly interested in creative industries? Does this represent some sort of newfound interest? You're all looking at me and saying, no, you're meant to talk about that, I'm here to listen. That's fine. I'll wait. I think what happens in the policy area is that things are never really quite as clear cut. 2009, the government changed in 2007. Enterprise Connect was a program under the Howard government. New governments like to put their stamp on things. They like to do different things. So they said, what about we extend this Enterprise Connect malarkey to some other areas? Maybe that will be popular. Maybe that will get us somebody says, I think the creative industry should be on. Maybe it's the Minister for the Arts, maybe it's somebody else, we don't really know. But somehow creative industries got on that. So did this present a newfound interest in the creative industries? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it was just circumstance. Maybe it wasn't a conscious decision to say, here are the industries of the future and they are the ones in which we think we can make a difference in Australia. Maybe it was just political opportunism. We may never find out. Problem one faced by Enterprise Connect, what are these creative industries again? Should we let gemstone cutters in? Should we let hairdressers in? So on and so forth. And that's the answer they came up with. In fact, software and interactive content was a relatively late entrant into this. But as we worked in this space, we discovered that there was no way to let games developers in, people in the online games and video game space. And they seem to sit very, very clearly within the creative industry. So yes, they're in the club. But to let them in, we let in software and interactive content. And so that means people who write actuarial software, people who write workflow software, people who would not identify within the creative industries are within the creative industries. And that idea of being able to identify with this larger group of creative industries is a problem, as I will talk about as we go. So, as I was saying, the Creative Industry Centre provided business reviews to companies, which turned over more than $2 million originally, and they turned over $1 million. What's the problem with that as a policy setting? Relatively large companies within the creative industries, a very small segment of the creative industry. So first of all, you've got to be a company. Does anyone, some people work for arts organisations, are your organisations companies? Or are they incorporated associations? Or am I speaking politically? So, not everyone in the creative industries runs a company, first of all. Some people run other corporate structures which don't have ACN, so they're out. Turning over more than 2 million was a very high threshold, and we argued it down to 1 million, which was still very, very high. And we estimated that 93% of activity within the creative industries take place by people under that $1 million threshold. But still, that meant hundreds of business reviews and thousands of consultations with micro businesses. So even with that threshold of 1 million, we still found plenty of people in the creative industries to deliver the programs. We would always have argued for that threshold to be lower, but somehow it was about right for our resources, for the amount of people out there. We found those companies. And for everyone else, we did free consultations for everyone who didn't fit under the threshold. So here are 4 problems that we face. These are kind of 4 problems that we wrestled with throughout the course of the Creative Industries Innovation Centre's life. Firstly, that lack of a global agreement about who is in and who is out of the club. So if you go to the UK, they have a different set of criteria about what they call the creative industries. If you go to a range of different countries, nobody has the same set of definitions. Secondly, we had a parent department which didn't understand the creative industries. A manufacturing company is very different to a creative industries company. It creates value for its product in a very different way. Those chairs that you're sitting on are constructed from a variety of components along a production line. Each one of those components adds value to the end product, which you then sell onto a wholesaler, who sells it on to you guys or to other people. So you can see that along that chain, value is created at every part. That's not necessarily the case for a film. It's not necessarily the case for a website. So I'm getting policy agreement with a department which came from that manufacturing point of view was quite a challenge. There was a lack of data about the creative industries, not least of all because we didn't know who was in the club. No, we didn't know how to quantify them. We didn't know where to go for information about them. Some sectors had quite detailed information about them. The arts in particular has been well documented for many years and has a great deal of statistical information about it. There's hardly anything about the fashion industry. There's hardly anything about marketing and commerce. Try and find some industry association about PR, for instance. It's very, very tricky. And finally, the industry sectors did not see themselves as part of a whole. So an actor doesn't think they're in the same business as an architect. A fashion designer doesn't think they're in the same business as a software developer. So nobody out in the real world, nobody saw this as one cohesive industry. And so these are the kind of 4 problems that when I look back at them, those are the things which plagued us throughout our time working in creative industries. And they were all reasons for the creation of that report, for the Valuing Australia's Creative Industries. It's time for